a private-led but government-enabled economy. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, DG sir, for that insightful tone setting. If you really believe that you are important, just as my boss just announced, and your voice is important in shaping the policies that will bring about a sustainable digital economy, please can you give a resounding applause to the Director General, National Information Technology Development Agency. Thank you very much. Thank you, DG sir. Okay, the next speaker will be giving us a context on the state of Nigeria's startup ecosystem. Now I'll be calling Mr. Kasim Sodengi, who is also the SA to the Honorable Minister, Federal Ministry of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy. Please let's welcome him with a good clap. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. The lunch must have been heavy. First, I would like to thank Onda and Nida for the opportunity to speak. My work has been made easier because of the brilliant speech and context setting that the DG has done, capturing in his erudition the state of affairs, how to think about regulations and how they impact the startup ecosystem and entrepreneurship in Nigeria. He did set a good tone for what we should be discussing. I would like to borrow a leaf from his book and stress that policy cannot be for policy's sake. Sometimes in Abuja, we get a bit into our heads, right? It's important to always think about the ecosystem first, to think about the problems. Policy should speak to challenges, opportunities, and creating, avenues to better the lives of citizens. I think it's always important to start with that context. I usually prefer to speak extempore, just speak from my heart, but today I did write so that just some notes so that I go through them and make the case. From the theme I was giving is to further set the context for the state of Nigeria's startup ecosystem. What this means in my mind is that there's a startup ecosystem, there are people in it, there are businesses in it, there are opportunities in it. Essentially, startup activity or digital entrepreneurship is about business, making money, raising money, making money, and creating opportunities, which is the lifeblood of every economy. So my short sort of address will be focused on the business issues and not the Abuja issues. I'll touch on the Abuja regulatory space issues, but I'll speak largely about how to help that ecosystem. It's always good to remember that Abuja works for the rest of the country. And I think that from a regulatory and policy perspective, when we start with that, it makes it easier to think through what needs to happen. So starting out, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, innovators, regulators, and partners in this shared journey, good morning, good afternoon as the case is. Thank you for allowing me to open our session, setting the context, Ignite, on the state of Nigeria's startup ecosystems, opportunities, and regulatory challenges. I hope we spark not just ideas today, but a renewed sense of mobilization because our ecosystem is at a moment of decision. Let's begin with the numbers. Over the past decade, and especially in recent years, Nigeria has become a significant hub for startup funding on the continent. I think everybody knows that. Publicly reported data shows that Nigerian tech hub deals ran into the 1.5 billion USD range. And some data suggest up to 1.7 billion in key areas over the years. This means we're no longer nascent, we're in motion, we have drawn capital, global interest, and structural emergence. But within that sum, what of local capital? How much is coming from Nigerian angel networks, indigenous funds or local investors. The data is less precise. What we can observe are the following. The things we can observe are the following. The established angel networks, such as the Nigerian Angel Network, Angel Investment Network, that have been operating in Nigeria for years. There are now several homegrown venture capital funds operating out of Nigeria, and collectively they've raised in the low hundreds of millions of dollars in recent years, a promising signal that domestic investors are beginning to play a more meaningful role in funding local innovation, even if foreign capital still dominates overall deal flow. These do not suggest that local fundraising is happening, though it remains modest compared with global flows. Let me take that again. This does not suggest that local fundraising is not happening, though it remains modest compared with global flows and external capital. To frame an estimate, if Nigeria draws, say, 1.5 billion in venture funding in a given year, and local funds such as those from angel networks and domestic VCs, venture capitals, sums perhaps 10 to low hundreds of millions, then one might estimate that local raised capital in angel and domestic is probably the ballpark about 100 and 200 million or somewhat more within that range. Though I emphasize this is a rough estimate based on publicly known funds. There are tons of other funds and investment activities that are not disclosed publicly. So we do not know the entire universe of the investment to our local ecosystem. The key point is it is meaningful, but still remains still small relative to total flows, thus limited in its ability to drive scale on its own. The point being that while we're raising money locally and we're investing, especially Nigerians in diaspora, and there's much talk about Nigeria's startup ecosystem, but the question is, how much are we mobilizing? Are we mobilizing sufficiently? And I'll provide some of the challenges with this model of when disproportionately a chunk of the capital comes from abroad. That observation leads to the very first important takeaway. Nigeria has raised capital locally, and that is very positive sign. But the sustainability of our ecosystem, but for the sustainability of our local ecosystem, we must clearly start looking at where we mobilize even more local capital, how we deepen the domestic investor base, how regulatory policy actions can shift more capital from domestic sources into ventures. The point being, for the sustainability of our markets, we cannot be totally dependent on foreign activity or foreign reserves of capital to grow our enterprise. There's no question that we need FDIs, foreign direct investments, for a ton of large industry setting and so on and so forth. But for our startup activity, our tech-enabled, to protect our sovereignty, to think through what our data, and to provide value locally, we must think about how to raise capital locally if it's going to be sustainable. Where have investment flowed? A slight sectorial analysis. The question of where the money has gone, what sectors dominate and what are underserved. This is for our startup ecosystem. Let's just look at broadly without taking too much time. Here's what the data tells us. The fintech sector in Nigeria continues to command a very large share of deals and funding. According to recent reports, fintech accounted for circa about 72% of total equity funding in Nigeria in 2024. Across Africa more broadly, fintech companies raised almost $489 million US dollars, representing about 40% of all tech startup funding on the continent. By contrast, other sectors are comparatively negligible. EdTech in Africa raised only about 17 billion USD, just about 1.5% of the total, and e-health raised about 32 or 33, approximately, about 2.9. Africa has an education challenge. We do have education challenges in Nigeria. We have challenges around our healthcare, but we've raised only negligible capital and the ecosystem around health and education and sanitation are quite really tiny. It calls for a rethinking of what we're doing with our ecosystem. Why is this the case? A few reflections. getting to the policy questions. Fintech is solving a very visible urgent problem: financial inclusion, payments, digital banking in Nigeria. The addressable market is large, the business model is clear. Investors, local and global, understand fintech more easily. They see comparables, see exits. They make their money back. They see the value of their investments, or at least the potential of it. That reduces perceived risks. By contrast, sectors like edtech, health tech, insurtech, are either more fragmented, require greater regulatory complexity, involve deeper infrastructure, have longer time to market, or offer less clear exit pathways. They are more challenging. We need them absolutely. They are more challenging. Higher gestation period, more patience and forbearance, regulatory certainty and support. And this is where we need to take a bit more action. There may also be bias in the ecosystem. Founders and investors gravitate to what has been proven rather than exploring new frontiers. This is the challenge of regulators in every market. What tends to happen is that people do what they know. It is regulators, policymakers that set the tone for rebalancing an economy, for thinking through of catalyzing other sectors that are quite required but are challenged. This sectoral imbalance is not necessarily bad in itself. The fact that fintech is strong is a good thing, but it does raise the question: are we over-reliant on one sector? Are we neglecting others that are socially valuable, potentially economically powerful? This brings us to the next dimension: innovation ecosystems beyond Lagos, models and purpose we should consider. When we talk about ecosystems, we often point to vibrant clusters in Lagos, the talent, the deals, the buzz. But what about other ecosystems in Nigeria, Kano, Enugu, Abuja, or even more rural places? These places have also talent, business models, and innovation. But the critical question is, should they aim to be like Lagos? Do they need to follow the Lagos script? My answer, not necessarily. We should recognize that one size doesn't fit all. Innovation and startup activity can look different depending on the local context. Two angles. One, what models work for us in Nigeria? We might ask, do we need to replicate Lagos fintech-centric, VC-driven models everywhere? Or do we need distributed models, localized clusters specializing in specific verticals like agri-tech, climate-smart innovation, creative tech, and rooted in problems, in local problems and talent? The second point, are the ecosystems valid as they are? The value may not be in them becoming replicas of Lagos, but in them leveraging their uniqueness. For instance, a university town might specialize in deep tech or health tech. A region with agriculture might build agri-tech cluster. A creative hub might focus on digital creative economy. The policy implication: let's design frameworks that encourage diverse models, not just a single dominant one. A helpful parallel: recall the US era of the Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act, what is known as the Obama, in the Obama era is known as the Jobs Act. The legislation recognized that startups ecosystems require regulatory realignment, mobilization of capital, investor protections, and importantly, regional variation. Similarly, Nigeria can think of how to align innovation policy so that we do not force every place to replicate Lagos, but rather amplify the strength of each locale and connect them through local infrastructure. I've been warned, so I'll try and wrap up. I will go to lessons from other ecosystems so that we can find solutions. Two key societies I want us to point out to. One, Rwanda, though small, Rwanda has a very deliberately built national innovation ecosystem with clear regulatory frameworks, digital infrastructure, ease of doing business, and a focus of hub status for Africa. It shows how smaller jurisdictions can punch above their weight. Singapore, a city-state, I'm using small places so that we can think. A city-state that built a global innovation ecosystem by combining talent, infrastructure, and regulatory clarity, IP protection, etc. From both, the takeaway for Nigeria, an ecosystem needs policy coherence, capital mobilization, development and infrastructure, and linkages to global market. Moving forward, I'm wrapping up. Just give me 1 minute. Finally, and importantly, let's talk solutions. One, collaborations. One is the element of the Nigerian Startup Act that sets up a council for collaboration across key regulators. It's a very important mechanism. It will help us align our policies and think properly. Two, the Ministry of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy is setting up a Nigerian data exchange. I'll have to read this. One of the success ingredients in payment fintech has been data exchange that eliminated asymmetries. For example, interoperable payments, shared infrastructure. For Nigeria to unlock innovation in agri-tech, health tech, etc., we need to make public data mandatory in anonymized, usable form via a Nigerian data exchange platform. This can stimulate startups and innovators who use data to build insights, model, and services. Startups need data. Without data, they can't build anything. Then mobilizing the local pool of capital. Our angel network provides clues of what is possible, but we need to scale. Regulatory bodies like the CBN and the SEC must refine frameworks to facilitate local fund formation, investment vehicles, wholesale debt vehicles. For example, one brilliant thing that was done in 2020, it went unnoticed. Banks cannot invest up to 20% of their balance sheet in alternative investments, like private equity or venture capital. We're not seeing much of it. Some more work is needed. We need to consider wholesale debt to complement equity via the National Collateral Registry that's already in existence in the CBN, but we can do more through a partial risk guarantee structure to de-risk early stage investments and help ventures which might not be ready for all equity investment but can still. Importantly, we must shift our mindset from valuation chasing. Our market shows that IPOs and secondaries are thin. Therefore, we must focus on supporting real businesses, profit-oriented, sustainable operations, not just growth at all costs, it's just acquiring numbers and customers. And those unicorn fantasies, but the long-term viability of our ecosystem depends on building real businesses with long-term frontiers and horizons and play the game as our market requires, not as we read in the books and journals of foreign startups situated elsewhere. I hope this helps us to think about the issues and so that we can focus regulatory energies and challenges into solving them. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for him. Thank you so much, Mr. Sodangi. So we're moving into a very important part of today's discussion. It is the regulatory landscape mapping session. So this segment focuses on understanding the mandates, engagements, challenges of the key regulatory bodies that shape Nigeria's innovation and startup ecosystem. So for this session, we'll be taking a round robin approach. So each agency will have 3 minutes to present their mandates, current engagements with startups, and perceived challenges. Our moderator, I'd be inviting her up. She's going to guide the session and keep the conversation flowing. So please join me in welcoming on stage Miss Abra Dagnan. A round of applause for her, please. She'll be in charge of this session, and we'll be inviting the next session as well. So we're going to be having various agencies and she'll be calling them up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. A very good afternoon to everyone. I'm taking permission to stand on the already established protocol. So I'd like to say good afternoon to the MDA representatives here, our panelists, heads of MDAs present, industry, stakeholder actors, and innovators in the room. We know that increasingly in today's digital age, especially in a country like Nigeria, there are evolving mechanisms around regulatory implementation. There are evolving mechanisms around tools and even mechanisms for the implementation of public services in government. However, this means that most of the time, or more often than not, government ministries, departments, and agencies find themselves implementing cross-cutting mandates and find themselves in situations where their mandates appear to overlap. And this arises or gives room for potential regulatory confusion regulatory overlaps which have implications for startup and innovators in the ecosystem. For us here in Digital Nigeria, this is crucial because as Mr. has already set the tone and ran the numbers, the Nigerian ecosystem is thriving, and with venture capitalist investment that runs into billions of dollars. And so, for us here today, we have one simple mandate, which is to ask not why, but how. How can all the stakeholders here today in this room come together to map out frameworks so that all these agencies can work together? How do we agree upon and establish a framework or a mechanism that can allow for interagency coordination? And so that's what this session is all about in a nutshell. And that is why I'm here today. So my name is Abra Dangnan. I'm Associate Director at Advocacy for Policy and Innovation. And my brief is to moderate the session. As the speaker said earlier, it's a round robin format where we'll be calling up MDA representatives who would give us a brief overview of their mandate and their interaction with innovators and startups in the ecosystem, just to set the ground or set the tone. After which, we'll delve into the second part of the session, which will go into the nitty-gritty, try to highlight what the problems are, what the key issues are, and go into what the root causes and the consequences are using a problem tree analysis framework, so that at the end of the day, we can leave this session with an overview of what the problems are, and we can understand how these problems can be solved. So I'm going to be calling up on stage our panelists. Permit me to call on Yes, so permit me to call on Mr. Babatunde Bamigboye, the head of legal Nigeria Data Protection Commission. Please, a round of applause for him as he steps on the stage. Also, please help me welcome Mr. Jonas Agu of the National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion, NOTAP. I would also like to welcome on stage Dr. Garba Dahiru Gandu, the Special Assistant Technical to the Secretary of the Nigerian Educational Research and Development Council, NERDC. Thank you so much. So as I said earlier, they will come on stage and give us a brief overview of their mandates and the interactions with startups within the ecosystem. Permit me, my amiable panelists, and please indulge me, let's play a little game. Considering that we have very limited time on our hands, each of you have approximately 5 minutes to go through this first phase of the session. And so because of that, once you are speaking, once you see me walking up to you, once I get halfway here, you know that you have 2 minutes on the clock. And once I come very close to you, you know that you should be rounding up. So let's see how well we can do the game. And who knows, there might be a prize for the winner. So I would like to begin. Thank you so much. So please, I would also like to call Dr. Olubumi Ajala, the National Director of NCARE, to join us. Thank you so much, sir. So as I was saying, please indulge me. Let's see who will win the game. Who knows? We might just have a winner. Thank you so much. So I would like to begin on my left with Dr. Garba Dahiru. Could you please, sir, give us like a brief overview of what your agency mandate is, and then narrow it down to how it relates to startups in the ecosystem and how your agency, or in what capacity currently, your agency engages with innovators in the ecosystem?
Okay. I think you need to press. Yeah, thank you very much. Let me appreciate the DG NIDA for having this forum, and also appreciate the innovators and all the distinguished personalities that are gathered here and participants. The Nigerian Educational Research and Development Council is a grade A parastatal under the Federal Ministry of Education. Principally, it is charged with several mandates. The mandate that relates to curriculum development, book development, language development, education research and development, special program that relates to emerging issues, and also the aspect of special program also in relation to education. But I think principally as it relates to this gathering, the most important aspect that one would want to talk about or the mandate is about curriculum development, because curriculum is the key, in fact, is the pathway to educational content, is the pathway to educational transformation. And as part of our curriculum development efforts, we have within the previous years partner with different agencies as an agency under education that is charged with developing curriculum at all levels, but then principally keying into basic and senior education, levels to provide linkages for higher education at tertiary level, especially as it relates to teacher education, university education, and polytechnics. And in doing this, we have done a lot. We have partnered also with NIDA in coming off with, the digital literacy curriculum. And that is part of the curriculum review process that we had embarked upon, which is outcome based, competency based, and that has a lot to do with 21st century skills. And in fact, there's a lot more to go into it. So these are basically the issues that we have to do. And then also there's also issue of quality assessment of learning content, including e-resources. These are basically the major content, mandates that I think that one would want to talk about as it relates to this gathering. Thank you very much.
Your time is not up. I just had to come in here so that they can get their shot. So let's do it in reverse. When I
Okay.
move there.
Oh, I'm muted.
Yeah, so you are still on the clock. You can.
Okay. So do I take it back?
Yes.
Okay, the Nigerian Educational Research and Development Council is a grade A parastatal under the Federal Ministry of Education. It is charged with several mandates. The first is the mandate that have to do with the issue of book development, curriculum development, language development, education research and development, special program center, and education resource development. So, but principally, I said key what relates to or what pertains to this meeting is the issue of curriculum development and book development or quality assurance of instructional materials. As part of our curriculum development mandate, we are charged to develop curriculum at all levels of education. But principally, we key into basic and senior secondary education curriculum development processes, which really provide linkage for tertiary education. Curriculum, as we are aware, is the key to educational content and to educational outcomes. So it is the curriculum that will drive whatever educational process in terms of policy standard and in terms of delivery process. Then apart from this also is the issue of the assurance or quality assurance and assessment of instructional materials at all levels of education, including general leadership and including also e-resources and e-content. And in the delivery of this kind of mandate, for us to undertake the mandate, we partner with so many agencies. I would want to really mention one big stride that we had with NIDA in terms of developing the digital literacy curriculum, which is part of our curriculum renewal and reform effort under the Federal Ministry of Education to try to really reform the education delivery process and also the learning content in our basic and secondary education levels. It is a giant stride because the curriculum development process is based on a new approach that we call it competency-based and outcome-based approach keying into it also 21st century skills, which are very essential in terms of, content, selection, in terms of content development, in terms of standards as to what the learner should learn, that are implementable, that are learnable, that are also very conducive to the learners, and in terms of also relevance, validity, and so many aspects that are considered when we want to select, curriculum and develop it to this level. In fact, it has never been done in Nigeria. This is the first time that it's coming into existence, and we are scaling up over what has been obtainable in other African regions, because we used to be the curriculum center, of excellence in Africa. Many countries used to come and copy from us, but then they scale up. Now we are also scaling up, so we are rising above that level, that we are going beyond even the competency and outcome-based, processes that is acknowledged worldwide. And the curriculum now is really hands-on, is skill-based, 21st century based, talking about innovation, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, and all that it takes. In fact, even the soft skills that are there, so many things into it. And the delivery process now is such that the curriculum has elements and features that are really very learner friendly, and they key into aspects of digital utilization in terms of deployment of technology to deliver, not as content, but as transferable skills that each learner would have to undergo and that each teacher would have to undergo across all subjects, because it has become now the norm that there is no going back, and that is part of the reform in the education under the National Education Sector Renewal Initiative, and also under the National Education Data Initiative.
Okay.
Learners, teachers would have to undergo this, not as content, but as processes to be deployed in instruction and learning. And this is the way to go, and also in assessment processes. And also when it comes to content validity, content assurance of our textbooks and instructional materials, including e-resources. In fact, we have developed quality assurance and assessment manuals that have key indicators, key assessment indicators based on descriptors on a scale of 1 to 5 that you have to rate based on the feelers, based on several indicators and descriptors that would give you an aggregate of what a document needs to, attain in terms of benchmark for it to be allowed into the school system.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Gandu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ago, please, could you give us a brief overview of what NOTAP's mandate is and how they engage, or how their operations, unfold in their engagement with the startup ecosystem?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jonas Nzago. I work for NOTAP. NOTAP stands for National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion. It's a parastatal under the Federal Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, saddled with responsibility of registration of technologies that are imported into the country. It's also saddled with responsibility of monitoring the implementation of those technologies in the sites of the companies that acquire them, and then to develop mechanisms for capacity building, negotiation capacity, and local content in all these sectors. We implement this by evaluating those agreements and registering them, monitor them, find out technology gaps. Then in finding out these technology gaps, we identify areas of collaboration between us and key players in the sector where these gaps are identified. And what have we been able to do? We took them sector by sector. Now, with the ICT sector, we discovered that software is taking over the operations. Software is not the end, like the DG has said. ICT is not the end, it's a process. Now, it is taking over the process of business, both in the manufacturing sector, in the telecom and all that. Now, NOTAP said, if we do not develop a framework that can get our system working by our people, then we'll keep importing applications from India, China, everywhere. So we develop what we call local vendor policy. What is local vendor policy? NOTAP designed the policy to make sure that there's local involvement in the implementation of ICT in any sector. And basically, we had to gather some multinational OEMs in a roundtable, in a discussion of this nature, to say, okay, there are three components of fees paid in an application: license fee, implementation fee, and annual maintenance. License and professional fee may be paid in full, but the annual maintenance has to be shared between Nigerian ICT companies who must be involved in the implementation of the application and the OEM. And what was our mission? Our mission is to get our people involved so as to build capacity as well as develop infrastructure to support whatever that is being imported. And I can tell you today that most of the applications we are using in Nigerian banking sector as not the main core banking application are being developed locally. It's also important to note that some of the local developers we have today have been able to export some of their products outside the country. The challenge we have now, which is what moderators say we are going to discuss, but I don't have to mention it now, is that some of these applications developed locally are competing with those imported from any part of the world. This is one success story in this aspect. We also do that in the R&D sector, where we are supporting startups, R&D people, universities, and individual researchers to develop their network and products into commercializable level through what we call NOTAP Industry Technology Transfer Fellowship and other programs. So we have been working with Association of Nigerian Inventors, and we invite them, encourage them with university lecturers to be able to see that the research they bring from the university are commercialized. I think we can stop it here.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Ako. Now, next, yes, a round of applause, please. So next up, we have Mr. Babatunde Bamiboye, the head legal at Nigeria Data Protection Commission. Sir, please, could you give us a brief overview of the mandate of the NDPC and how the operation runs in your engagement with the startup ecosystem as it relates to your mandate? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yes, we want to thank the organizers, NIDA, and the ministry, indeed, for organizing this program. Indeed, the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, NDPC, is like we can say we are the guardian angels of the startup ecosystem anywhere you find a data protection authority. And why do I say that? Let me share this mandate like a story. Imagine Man U playing with Liverpool without a referee. You can imagine the outcome. So when you have a data protection authority, it comes in as the referee for the game. Imagine an ecosystem, a baby trying to cross, or maybe a toddler trying to cross the road where there is no crisscross and all that, where there are no traffic rules. Imagine people driving bicycle, then trailers, and all of those. The Data Protection Authority comes in to provide guidelines. So the first thing that we do actually is to regulate through guidelines, through directives, and through standards that we provide for startups as well as legacy establishments. So apart from this as well, we do investigation. In case of breaches or cases where we suspect breaches of privacy rights, we also go in. And then, of course, we cooperate. But it's important to give context to some of this. In the area of regulation, for instance, we look specifically at some things that a data subject, that is people like you and me and everybody out there, a natural person, we look at them and imagine what kind of protection do they deserve in a fast evolving digital landscape. The first, of course, is the principle that data must be processed lawfully, fairly, and transparently. That is, if anyone is going to collect your data, he must do it in accordance with an established law. Apart from having a law, that is, let's say the NIDA Act of 2007, you have that as your first objective that enables you to process data. Apart from this law as well, then there are other lawful bases that you must also rely on. Laws such as you must get the consent. Imagine coming in and then they process our data for reasons we don't even know anything about. That would be wrong without our consent. Then apart from this consent, there is what you call the legal obligation. That is, a law has mandated that the data should be collected, for instance, for tax purposes, or there is a court order for this to take place. Then there is the vital interest. That is, well, there is no consent, there is no legal obligation, but it became very important for the data of the data subject, that is the owner of the data, you and I. Maybe in an emergency situation, we need to access this data to save lives or to save property, as the case may be. Then you have the public interest as well. Let's say there is a pandemic. It's important to check the record, the medical, the vitals of people who come into the auditorium as a result of pandemic like COVID-19 and all of those. There is a legitimate interest that I believe startup ecosystem will be interested in. And that is, you have something so peculiar to you as an organization that you must process this data even without the consent of the owner of that data. Apart from this as well, then there must be purpose limitation. That is, after collecting this data, you should not process it beyond the way that, the original purpose for which consent or other lawful bases have been, given. Then, apart from this, there is storage limitation. For how long should you keep this data? We have seen people who keep data for as long as 20 years of criminal records. And then the question comes, should you keep my data just for violating traffic lights? And then you have my data for upwards of 20 years. And then we were in a courtesy call with an institution and somebody came and said, oh, can you give me the record of this individual? Probably he violated a traffic offense. And this is a political environment, not the current dispensation. So you can imagine somebody having record to your days in primary school, in secondary school, whatever you did at that point in time, and then now using it as a tool against you at this point. Then apart from this as well, we recognize that, all of these principles may just be jargons. We check out for duty of care, that whoever collects your data owes you a duty of care. Now, apart from this context, yes, of course, we collaborate, and we do that a lot. We are in collaboration, for instance, with SMEDAN, which is responsible for startups such as this, in a way, SMEs. And the idea is to actually make sure that the little companies and little firms are able to comply with the law. And when there is a breach of your rights, we also step in. In fact, there was a case of a guy who took a loan. He wanted to take a loan from a bank around 2008. And they took 2 million naira from his account. They never disbursed the loan, about 100 million naira. And then the matter went to court. On 2 occasions, it got to judgment. 2012, and the judgment was never delivered because the judges were elevated and another person transferred. Until 2024, when he approached us and he relied on just one aspect of our law, access, he sought from the bank. What made you to take my money? What information did you rely on to take my money without even giving me the loan? I only need the information, no more. And the bank realized that trouble is coming. A matter that went to court, was in court for nearly 10 years, was resolved within 3 months, just because this individual knew his data subject rights. So just in a nutshell, that is what we could do.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, sir. And then last but not least, we would have Mr. Olubumi, Dr. Olubumi Ajala, the National Director, National Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for giving us the opportunity, because most often people don't actually know what National Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics is all about or what we do. But simplify that for us. We are the SPV of NITDA. And basically, you can just look at us from three areas, which I'll say three areas, three global technologies, and three purposes. Our mission is basically to promote research, development, and adoption. So the first three will be research, knowledge generation, but translating this knowledge into development is the second part, from research to development, then adoption, which has to do, after development, how citizens, startups, the ecosystem adopt the technology. And the second part of that is, what are these technologies? The first part is artificial intelligence, robotics, and the third part of it also is so global, I say, of fourth industrial revolution technologies. So you are talking about UAV, blockchain, additive, subtractive manufacturing, even up to quantum computing, as long as emerging technology. So if you begin to see it, that even technology that coming up, we have positioned to promote the research, the development, and the adoption of those technologies. And the last part is, what are they for? What's the reason where we want to do this? There are also basically three reasons: for economic growth, to improve lives of people, and to make us globally competitive. So those, if you can see, is what National Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics is meant for. But if that looks theoretical, I can put some of them into perspective for you. We are basically tasked with driving the AI policy development and adoption of national AI strategy. So when you begin to pick up what looks like a document, the operationalization of national AI strategy rests with us. And I'll give you an example. When we talk about sectoral adoption, I give you agriculture. If you don't know how big that it is, under agriculture, we start thinking about food production. We start talking about fishery, forestry. We start talking about livestock. So recently when we went for livestock hackathon, it's just one part of us actualizing that. Then I move us away from that. You look at ecosystem development, which is innovation and research. We are leading cutting-edge AI research, including development. And you can see from the HENA class what we have done. In terms of research, we facilitated, which was funded by NIDA, 45 AI researchers. And I begin to link it up with the startup quickly from here, because that's the next part of it. The startups funded 45 AI researchers in these areas of AI and demonstration of this technology in agriculture. But because of time, let me move quickly to partnership development. When you begin to talk about what in this technology we do with World Bank, EU, Institute Safety, all these hyperscalers, all of them, AWS, Meta, Google, Microsoft, all these, we are the center of this. Now, I need to talk about what we do with the startup. I've spoken, if you've seen what we've done with Google AI Fund, it is with the startups. What we've done with Meta Accelerator is it with the startups. Also, as I've mentioned about the AI research, we did not just make it as a research. If you go back to the call for application, we made sure AI startups were included. So you couldn't just build a team and say we are doing research into AI in agriculture, AI in healthcare. We ensure you included a startup You can go back and see, and that's how we've done. Now going to demonstration, activating that, we ensure we have AI startup. Startup including in that. I see my time moving, and the last one I need to speak to, they say I need to talk about challenges. We got some challenges, interventions on what we are doing, computational assistance. When you look at what the startups are doing, we're providing resources for startup building. I gave an example in the last session where the laptop you hold cannot contain even 4 genome sequencing. And if you're here to build AI solutions, you know the kind of storage you require. We are providing resources for people building and doing research because GBB has like 1 petabyte of storage, and we have access to a bulk of that. Not to talk of computation GPU with AI scaling up, we are having access to GPU soon to provide for startup to build.
Okay.
Sir. Okay.
Yes, we'll move on to the next session where you have some more time to expand on some of the core implementation strategies that you are undergoing. But right now, we are moving now to the next session, which would drill down into some core challenges now that we have the foundation of what the mandate is for the agencies here represented. And of course, I'm sure you can see our flip chart where we'll be using our board to like visualize what the problem is in a problem tree manner. Because I'm here and I'm wondering to myself, I'm thinking, surely there must be instances where your mandates overlap. Because I'm imagining if I were an innovator or a startup owner and I'm focused on tech for edutech, right? Or I'm developing maybe a software, or a resource for edutech, then I'm thinking, okay, I have something to do with NoTap. And then I also know that because it's edutech, there's a curriculum aspect to it. So I have also links with NERDC. In the same vein, there is data involved, as Mr. Bamboy has highlighted, because of course the full value chain of data is NDPC's concern. And so there's some data aspect as well. And imagine if I were to make that solution AI enabled, then of course I have dealings with NCIR. So I'm wondering, are there instances or in the implementation on your day-to-day operations, have you observed instances where sometimes your mandate would overlap with the mandate of another core agency? And in answering that question, could you also highlight to us areas where you might have found regulatory or compliance challenges that might be inhibiting startups from operating or from growing because of you trying to implement your mandate, not of your doing, so to speak, but because it just so happens that because of the technology or the nature of things within the landscape, mandates overlap. So, sir, I'll begin with you. Dr. Gaba.
Okay.
No, I think the microphone
It's
is
on.
on.
Okay. Thank you very much. In the execution and delivery of our mandate, really there are core areas that I think that we need to look into. First is the issue of the curriculum development itself. Because when you are talking of curriculum development, you are talking of selection and then, developing content. In developing content, usually the curriculum development process is such that you don't have the luxury or monopoly of knowledge about all it takes, especially as it relates to content. We are a curriculum development agency. We have our manpower, but then we also have to engage other critical stakeholders to come up with content so as to co-create and co-develop the curriculum. And this is part of the universal process or global process for curriculum development, all over, and that is what we normally do. And in the selection process, you have to be meticulous and you have to be focused and directly purposeful so as not to let the most important person or content specialist, education that will contribute to the co-development or co-creation of the curriculum content itself. So this is an issue really, because it would have to be representative across all the subjects, all the learning areas from all the different fields, and including the one that would relate to the digital aspects of content. But then everything is about digital because we are going digital. So all the other content would have to be done in such a way that it will be delivered deploying, the digital means of, delivery, deploying technology. And for you to be able to do that, you would have to have people that have the requisite digital pedagogy and digital background to be able to execute that and to make that happen. For that, that is a challenge, but I know we will overcome that through agencies like NIDA. I'm just getting to know, for example, now about the Center for Robotics and AI. That would have been an important partner in the process of our development. And this is a challenge too. And apart from this, also the aspect of delivering the curriculum itself via the technological means would mean that each teacher and each learner would have to be taken through this. And for it to be taken, or for the teacher to be taken through this, it means some content would have to be developed that are inclined towards, guiding the teacher as to what to do. So, which means then that there will need to be teacher's guide that will be able to, guide the teacher on how to manage his class, what using technology, either using synchronous or asynchronous means, or using all the devices and the media that it deserves to be, subjected to. Because we have a component that we call, we have the focal competence area, where all the aspects of delivery using technology are critically explained and elaborated. In essence, it means then that we would have to have requisite backup and document that will guide the teacher to do that, and not only that, also to train him. So that means then that there have to be some kind of innovative means of letting the teacher and the learner also know about this and what to do. So this is an area that I think we need to look into. And then apart from this now, there's the issue of, developing learning content, instructional resources, instructional materials, including e-resources. When you are talking of, in whatever forms, now when you are talking of, be it in textual form, digitally, be it in video or audio video form, simulation, or even animation, these are all issues that need to be taken into consideration in developing the, content and creating this. You have to create, but in co-creating, it does not necessarily restrict itself to the issue of the digital means of doing it. There is also the aspect of understanding the curriculum to break it into, bits that can be teachable, that we call scope and sequence. You have to scope and sequence the content of the curriculum subject by subject, breaking them down into teachable lesson bits, which now would enable any digital kind of means of reproducing the content to key into that. Because you cannot produce, for example, a content that is just everlasting without duration, without necessarily addressing a particular pattern of lesson delivery. And also the pattern of lesson delivery itself, in terms of lesson plans, in terms of method of delivery, it will require technology. And that, I think, where we need the aspect of AI and all this into it, because we can impute all this into it in such a way that you can generate your lesson plan via a means that can be done. Then, aside the issue of the curriculum now, the issue of the assessment itself of the content, we have come up with, just like I've said earlier on, aspects of pillars that will address curriculum compliance, would address pedagogy, would address also structure and outline, would address gestures, would address quality of pictures, would address also issue of intermediality, interactivity, issue of flexibility, issue of security, issue of assessment, so many other standards that would have to be brought in or brought to bear on the issue of assessing content, even learning applications, how friendly they are, how flexible they are, how easily accessible they are, whether they are online, offline, and all this would have to be brought to bear on the issue of the e-resource or e-content that will need to be delivered for effective learning and for positive learning outcomes. These are all areas of challenges, but we've come up, like I've said, with manual that would, but it is very important, I think, that something like this is happening so that all the relevant agencies can come together and innovators can see ways of coming in to develop content. Because before you develop content and it is released into the system or introduced into the school system, it must pass through the quality assurance and assessment process of the Nigerian Education Research and Development Council. But this is what I'm saying, seeing some overlap in terms of especially the aspect of the elements or features that I've mentioned in terms of flexibility, interactability, and all that it takes in terms of security and all other quality in terms of quality of pictures, resonance, and all that it takes, so that this thing can be seen to be handled once and for all and given to maybe one point or one forum under which, or one process under which this can be done. And I think this can be handled digitally. And that's why we tried at our own level now to engage some innovators to come up with the issue of our quality assurance book and instructional materials, quality assurance and assessment management information system in such a way that people can submit to that and they can be attended to, via, online, and they can be also given their report and their reports. But I think more can be done in order to enhance the system. Thank you very much.
Where have you seen your mandates overlap?
Okay.
Right? And are there any regulatory or compliance challenges that you have experienced in operating or engaging with startups?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
What are the challenges? That's the...
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm happy with this question because it will offer an opportunity for me to make some clarifications. Oftentimes, we receive a call as to the mandate of NOTAP and that of NITDA. The mandate of NOTAP and that of NCC. Now, NOTAP was set up in 1979 by decree, which was ratified as an act of parliament in 2004 to regulate the inflow of technology, meaning that, and then promote locally developed technology. What it means is that our mandate is to register every technology that is imported into Nigeria by evaluating the agreements that contain the technical information regarding that technology. It also means that we have the mandate to have a framework to promote what is developed locally. So, if you go through the responsibility of NIDA, for instance, they are to implement.
I'm sorry for the interruption. Forgive me. There's an urgent announcement. There is a session going on now about startup in the main hall. If you're interested in a young person, please, as many of you as are willing to attend to that, should please go now. It's about to start. I'm sorry for interrupting, but they just need to know that it's about startup, scaling it and empowering it right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, what we do is that we now look at what technology that we bring in looks like by evaluating it. And then we look at it knowing that other agencies have mentioned, our sister agencies have mentioned, have specific and unique mandates. NITDA, for instance, implements Nigerian IT policy and development of local IT policy. Now, it doesn't have anything to do with registration of technologies that are imported into the Nigerian ecosystem, whether manufacturing, ICT, construction, and all that. Now, I will boldly say that by the degree of our mandate, we do not have any policy and implementation clash, overlap, because there is no other agency that has the mandate to register imported technology in Nigeria. and also to develop the local R&D into product and services as it may be. So I will say that there is no such visible overlap.
Okay, sir, but
However,
uh-huh.
However, in implementation of the mandate, we have also seen situations where an agency like Patent and Trademark Registry that is mandated to register and grant patents are being seen as NOTAP is encroaching in their responsibility. NOTAP does not register and grant patents. What we are doing is that based on the knowledge we have gathered through WIPO training, we facilitate in patent drafting, patent filing to Patent and Trademark Registry. They are the government agency responsible for granting patents. No.
Thank you once again for that question. Indeed, if you look at it from the surface level and even subsurface level, you may say that there is no apparent overlap, to be candid. However, just like the last speaker said, in terms of implementation, you may begin to see areas of convergence. This is the fourth industrial revolution. We cannot shy away from that fact. You have a technology that can deliver phone call, can enable can enable video, you watching Netflix and all of those. So at that point, you realize that indeed there is convergence, there is technological convergence, and then there is now regulatory convergence. That is the reality. For our own part, the fact that we regulate data privacy and every other within the digital ecosystem also data. But from our own part, the actual area is privacy. So it may come to a startup trying to imagine whom should we approach for this particular issue that is bordering, the development of a particular business. You may want to say you are going to need that for maybe a clearance, and that would be appropriate. But if you come to NDPC, for instance, for clearance, for you to go and process data, or for you to establish a technology and all that, we don't give clearance for that purpose. So in most cases, it is the users that tend to confuse the mandates of the organizations, which then lead to some level of intervention, or the regulator may now think that probably I could do this as well. It starts from people not really understanding where the boundaries really are in terms of what these organizations are about. But the moment you their Establishment Act, for instance, in the case of Data Protection Commission, you will see clearly that for us, it's about privacy. Has your data been breached? Has your right been violated? If it has been violated, then you come to us. Then you want to embark on a processing activity which may impact on the privacy of data subjects in Nigeria. Then you about the technology you want to use for this purpose. Then, of course, if it is want to test the internet to need that for that purpose. But ultimately, it requires the regulators working together to ensure that areas of convergence are properly managed. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. I would rather want us to say regulatory convergence or regulatory intersection. Because when you tell people about regulatory overlap, it's more seen from the negative side.
Yeah.
And there's no way you want to operate in the digital economy when I have to deal with the educational sector, health sector. And I would say I would not have something to intersecting with us. But what that comes to is that in this case, where intelligence or any of these emerging technologies, you are talking about data. Is there any point where personal data and privacy will not come up? So I need to work with data protection. When it comes to sectoral adoption, I need to work with other ministries. So in those areas, certainly we work together. But one major question you've said, so I just clarified that I don't want us to see it in that area as anyway, a time comes where if I need to develop solution for the healthcare, I need to talk with the Ministry of Health. Yeah. I need to work with NDPC. What are the kind of data set? When you talk with education in UK, it's an offense in UK when you look at PELs and other educational data collected. You will never see UK collecting socioeconomic status of any student. But all other OECD countries will collect that data set. So it needs to align with the Privacy Act of that country. But coming to what you said about the startups, if you are here, time will come where you will find out you want to build solutions. And there will be one kind of regulations where it might look as if it's impeding you. I'll give you an example of a young man that built a kind of a chatbot or an SLM. But the data set is collected it from YouTube. You need to know, aside, that those individuals you've collected their data set, they have right to it. The only reason this guy developed so much capacity that he's even able to teach other people. So what do? Are we going to inhibit and say now, we don't have this data set, but you can access it on YouTube or other platforms? So we don't stop. So what we do in our case is what we provide for the sandboxes. We provide you sandboxes to work within those frameworks that you might have inhibitions. With the people we are working with in Abeokuta, they're building solutions for agriculture, but it has to do with vision models. You have to have live recorded images. What do we do about that, about privacy? So we provide sandboxes for them to work. So I don't know if I've spoken to convergence, possibility, and what we do when we come to those cases.
Thank you so much, sir. It appears that our time is fast spent, but I know that in the next session, we'll dive deeper into how we can build upon these instances of convergence to ensure seamless implementation for the benefit of the startup ecosystem. But I'm sure that our key takeaway from here is that regulatory overlaps, although there are instances, we should also look to where there are convergence points and intersection points, such that we can work together to ensure a smooth sailing ecosystem. So on this note, I want to say a big thank you to Mr. Babatunde Bamigboye, Head Legal at NDPC, Mr. Jonas Agu of NOTAP, Dr. Garba Dahiru Gandu of NERDC, and of course, Dr. Ajala, the National Director of NCAIR. Thank you so much for sharing with us your key insights.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sure if any audience member has a question, I'm sure you can engage with them individually much later. But as we proceed to the next session, I would like to call on Dr. Odion Akpan to take over the next panel session. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, or it's now evening. Can I hear? Do I have people in the room? Good afternoon. Aha, thank you. All right. I've been told that we are running way behind time, so we will do it very quickly, but at the same time, we'll try and make it very insightful. I'm here to moderate a conversation with two very great people. One of them just came off the stage. So I'll be inviting back the representative from NOTAP, Mr. Jonas Nzeagu. Please give him a round of applause as he comes on stage. Next, I would also invite a representative from NIDA, NIDA IT Project Clearance, Dr. Usman Abdullahi Gambo. Round of applause for him as he comes on, please. Does anyone? Is Dr. Gambo around? Juliet, do you have? Dr. Gambo. Okay, so I have the pleasure of having Mr. Jonas Nzagu on the stage again, and just
Only me.
yes, two of us. But then, of course, it's very important
Okay.
that we hear from you in depth. We have about 10 minutes to do this.
Okay.
I'll introduce myself. My name is Odiong Akpan. I lead an organization called Ubula Africa. Ubula Africa is an innovation ecosystem support organization, and we focus on startup and small business support on one hand, corporate innovation on the other, and on the third hand, we do university industry collaboration. So why I'm here is to speak to the representatives from the government about business formation. And it is very important because as the Nigerian Startup Act has been enacted, a lot of startups want to benefit from the incentives, a provision in the act. And so this is an opportunity for us to hear from those who are, the custodians of the regulations, who can help promote startups within this Nigerian Startup Act environment. So I would ask Mr. Nzagu, I know you've already introduced yourself, but just to go deep into it, when you talk about NOTAP and the benefits that startups and entrepreneurs and the ecosystem can benefit from your organization, how do we get in? Who do we speak with? And how are we able to, as a startup, for example, how am I able to engage NOTAP?
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on the stage again. Our duty, the second segment of NOTAP mandate is to promote locally developed technology. And that is where a gateway, an opportunity has been created for startups. Now, innovation comes from R&D. So what NOTAP does, first and foremost, is to promote research-oriented activities in research institutes, industries, and universities to produce market-driven research. Emphasis on market-driven research. And how do we do this? We have what we call NOTAP Industry Technology Transfer Fellowship, where NOTAP, with the partnership of multinational companies who have established in Nigeria, collaborate with the university environment and individual academic research students who have the mandate or the desire to further their studies to carry out this research in an industry-oriented environment. And what is the essence? The essence is to produce commercializable R&D products. And let me be more specific. NOTAP collaborated with Dufil. Dufil is a company that is producing Indomie. And through this NOTAP Industry Technology Transfer Fellowship, the student that did her PhD in University of Nigeria in Soka did it in the factory of Dufil. And what did she do? She was able to research on producing a winning formula for working class ladies who want to win their babies to be able to go back to work. And by the supervision of the university, sponsorship of the private sector, the company that is having this R&D in their field, and NOTAP NUC collaboration, the student come up with this winning formula, which today has been commercialized. She is a researcher in the university, but she has a product that is running in the market already. So this is the way NOTAP helps startups from the R&D base to industry demand base. This is one. The second aspect is if you come to ICT sector, like I mentioned at the other session, NOTAP developed what we call local vendor policy. What is local vendor policy framework of NOTAP? We discovered that ICT is taking a lot of businesses in Nigeria, and these products are being imported either in the banking sector or telecom sector or even in manufacturing Today, you can stay in a particular place and monitor the flow rate of Nigerian bottling company on how they are bottling or how they are producing things. Now, NOTAP said we must develop our local IT companies into the system by making sure that their skill become useful. That is local content. That is startup. And they have been able to leverage on this to begin to develop products that are competing with the ones that are being imported into the ecosystem. Today, most of the microfinance banks, most of them in Nigeria are using locally developed core banking application. What we are fighting now, and that I said, is that we need the collaboration of NIDA to do what we call quality assurance and integrity test of all the products that have been developed in Nigeria, which NOTAP is pushing for banks like First Bank, Zenith Bank, Access Bank to begin to use. But they are giving us a feedback that these products are not certified, they are not tested, they can run our system down. The only way we can get them use it is when under normal collaboration between NOTAP, NIDA, and other ICT developing infrastructure or systems, collaboration, that is the word, to certify that these products are actually as good as the ones that have been imported, because they are the ones that have the skill to grant certification and grant integrity test and grant assurance of this product that they are not going to sink the banking sector, so that we can reduce the level of outflow of forex, as well as promote the integrity and hard work of those ICT companies who are startups in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for him, please. I think that's a lot of information that he shared. And in the spirit of sharing information, I know in the government circles, a couple of people would know NOTAP, but in the private sector, and especially the startup ecosystem, NOTAP might not be known. So how do you recommend we evangelize the objectives and the availability of NOTAP? What's the best way you think we can scale all of what you've shared with us?
Okay, beautiful. One sure way of getting the activities of NOTAP known is organizing this kind of forum and also participating in this kind of forum. Just last week, Thursday and Friday, 6th and 7th of November, we had Technology and Innovation Summit, where we gathered startups, where we invited multinational companies, where we invited vice chancellors of universities, where we invited committee of vice chancellors, where we invited Nigerian Association of Inventors and Innovators. It was a full-blown program like this, where people that have developed something, and especially those ones that have gone through our policy to stand on their own, came to give success story of what our program and programs have been able to help them to achieve in Nigeria, mentioning the products they have developed and where they have been deployed in ecosystem. So one such thing is, it has helped us to reach out to many people who are wanting to know. Then we have what we call Nigerian Association of Inventors. We have programs with them from time to time. And what do we do with them? We leverage on our database of R&D results, patented R&D results that they can work on to innovate. We make this information available to them. We also have what we call NOTAP Industry Technology Transfer Office, IPTTO. These are centers we have set up in universities. And what is the job of this? They go to faculties in the university to harness R&D results, encourage students, teach them on how to do patent search, and then be able to help them to register those patents. Then on the broad angle of registering foreign technology, you only know NOTAP when you approach CBN or your commercial bank to say, XY company abroad has worked for me. I need to settle them in the technology we have acquired from them. Then they'll ask you to go to NOTAP and get NOTAP certificates. But in this context, we are dealing with startups. So these are two angles from where the knowledge of what NOTAP does can be promoted across startups and innovation developers.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I would just use the opportunity to call on my second panelist. We've run out of time, sort of, but please welcome Dr. Usman Gambo to the stage. He is from NITA, and he would also be talking to us about, yes, you can see that. Yes, please.
Thank you.
Yes. So thank you and welcome. Please, if you don't mind, can you introduce yourself briefly? Tell us what you do for NITA, what your office does for NITA, especially around IT project clearance. Essentially, we are trying to determine how best the Nigeria Startup Act can be implemented such that the incentives that your office or the government can develop can be of benefit to the startup ecosystem. So, for example, with technology acquisition or procurement, I'm sure your office is able to midwife that interface between government agencies and the innovators and the startup ecosystem. So please introduce yourself and tell us how your agency and your department works.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Usman Abdullahi. I work with NIDA, of course, and as far as NIDA, what can I say other than, what we have been experiencing since morning about NIDA? I think majority of us know what NIDA is or what NIDA does, but the office that, I'm responsible, particularly the private sector and startups might not be aware of what the office is doing. I'm responsible for coordinating IT projects clearance in NIDA, and that is one of the most successful digital technology oversight in Nigeria, actually. What does it do? It oversees project deployment in government. The expectation is that any technology project from any government agency, by the way, the Nigerian federal government, we are talking of federal government, the expectation is that, of course, subnational levels should adopt this. We have on record over 1,316 official on record. If you go to civil service website, you'll see that 1,316 federal government agencies in Nigeria. Now, and that excludes some, including NDPA that just, participated in, the session earlier. So the expectation is that any government agency, for it to implement any IT intervention, must submit to NIDA for NIDA to review and then advise. What is NIDA looking for in its review? By the way, it's its mandate. I don't need to say more about NIDA's mandate, but it looks at four key things. Four key things in this project in review. One is the alignment of the intervention to government policies and strategy, digital technology policies and strategies. You may be aware that there's the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy of Government. So any intervention should align with that. So that's one of the things that we look at. I mean, because of time, I know there's not much time, but that is one. Secondly, one issue is duplication, avoiding duplication in intervention. For instance, because it's technology, you will find that government agencies, most agencies would want to deploy technology, particularly data centers, especially. So you would have NOTAP as an example, trying, because of its mandate, would want to would want to set up a data center. And another agency like Nigeria Data Protection Commission also setting up its data center as an example. That is an investment. That is huge investment for government. While Galaxy Backbone is there, that has been set up, established by government to provide services that government agencies utilize. So this process looks at that and then identifies if there is no justification for the deployment of an IT infrastructure that already exists that can be shared, then that is step down for government. So that is another thing that the process looks at. Another key, of which NOTAP, my colleague here, has also talked about, is promotion of indigenous technology. I mean, majority, what we do in most cases, we tend to find our technology, whether software or hardware, inferior in most cases. And so sometimes you need an oversight that will enforce the use of those technology. NOTAP is there, as my colleague has already indicated, but when these issues, the expectation is that any technology that will be deployed has to be cleared. So if that technology is more or less using foreign technology, while indigenous technology exists for similar thing, then that would be justification has to be provided. So promotion of indigenous technology is very, very important. Another is guaranteeing key things: security, interoperability, and so many other things, because it's very, very important that whatever technology is deployed, it has to be secure. Government data, we have Nigeria Data Protection Commission earlier. Government data, the sovereignty and the protection of citizens' data is very, very important. And government holds very sensitive information. So the process, this in a nutshell, is what the IT project clearance is all about. So, and that is what I oversee in NIDA. Of course, NIDA does so many things. NIDA does, the mandate of NIDA can be summarized into three: developmental, intervention. You can find it almost everywhere. Regulatory intervention. This IT project clearance is part of it. And the other aspects is the setting up of those centers like NCAR, like ONDAI, that is anchoring this, and so many others. So that is the aspect of regulation. And the third and final is advisory, and that is across any digital technology intervention, whether private or public sector organization. NIDA advises on that. And so that is, in a nutshell, what that is. As I said, this intervention, the project clearance is focusing mainly on public institutions. But NIDA has been looking at ways of how this can, the startups can, be able to participate in public procurement. So we are looking at ways of engaging, making it possible for startups to provide. And I'm sure, well, if an opportunity is provided, the participants here may have ideas on how this can be done. Of course, we have some ideas, but the key is that this session is theirs, and so we would hope to hear from them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gambo. Thank you, and I'll just try and merge both conversations because we've run out of time. Mr. Jonas, you had given us a real lecture on how NOTAP works. I learned a lot, and Dr. Gambo as well. So I believe that collaboration is the answer to this question we are asking, and hopefully the startups or the innovators and the companies in the room would know how to reach NOTAP or IT clearance, IT project clearance in NIDA. So I'll just use this opportunity to thank the panelists, and I'll ask you to please give them a round of applause as we as we close the session. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you give them a round of applause? They did excellently well. Thank you so much, Dr. Odion. He was the moderator for the session. So yeah, you'll be taking a group photograph. All right. So I'd like to invite once again Ms. Abra Dangnan for her session on data, consumer protection, and regulation for emerging tech. She's going to be inviting some key agencies, and the focus would be on data privacy, consumer rights, AI, blockchain regulation. So they will be having, unfortunately, just 15 minutes so that we can head to the next one and then we'll be closing. Thank you so much. And thank you to the people that are still here. I'm sure you're enjoying all the sessions. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you again for hanging on for this next session. So this next session focuses on a slightly different theme. We're looking at data, consumer protection, and emerging technologies, and we'll be calling on representatives from key agencies to answer a few questions, guiding questions to drive this session along. So I would like to call on Mr. Usman Abdullahi Dambo yet again. Thank you so much, sir. To please join me on stage, sir. Mr. Dambo. Yes. The session is a short one, I assure you, sir. Thank you, sir. And then I would also like to call on Mr. Babatunde Bamiboye, Head Legal NDPC. And Dr. Olubumi Ajala, National Director, NCA. I don't know if he's in. And then finally, Victoria Fabumi of ONDI. She'll be joining us in this session. So, thank you. Thank you so much, sir. And then Victoria Fabumi of ONDI. All right, she'll be joining us soon. Thank you so much, sirs, for joining us. I understand that we have very limited time, so we'll play that game again. But this time the rule is when I take off my glasses, you are the clock for 1 minute. But before we dive into the guiding questions for this session, I would want to just pick your brains and have your insights on this issue just for a minute, please. Dr. Dala spoke about regulatory convergence points and intersections, and it got me wondering. So, if we were to maximize that within the ecosystem for the benefit of the startups and for the benefit of implementing the Startup Act, do you have any suggestions around how we do that? So, for example, in the last session, I know that Mr. Agu highlighted the need for quality assurance and integrity tests, between NOTAP and NIDA. I'm wondering, is there a way this ecosystem can have a framework or something akin to a ways of working mechanism so that when there are situations where there appear to be convergence points between several agencies, there is a kicking mechanism that just takes place. How would that happen? Would there need to be like an MOU between all agencies? Would there be is there room for maybe a desk situated somewhere so that there is an overseeing, structure so that wherever there are overlaps or wherever there are intersection points, it's easy for any innovator or any startup actor to go to that particular desk and have a clear view of things. So I just want you to, in a minute, share your thoughts. What are the possibilities? And how practicable is it within, say, 90 days? Is this something that can be implemented in that short a time? So I would go over to, okay, sir.
Okay, let me start. Thank you very much. I think it's a very, very important thing that has to do. this issue of, I'm glad my colleague from NDPC mentioned that earlier. Regulatory convergence is very, very important. It's digital technology. And so the key aspect is being able to collaborate. Collaboration is key to ensuring that things happen the way they should. We have an opportunity now, I think, with the e-governance and digital economy bill that is currently, in the National Assembly. The Federal Ministry of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy should be the driver, essentially. If the ministry, through the digital e-governance and digital economy bill, can ensure the establishment of a dashboard whereby, interventions are monitored across MDAs, so that if maybe an issue of conflict is identified, that can be resolved easily. So there has to be an overseeing ministry that oversees all this. And our ministry, well, maybe we may be biased because all of us are from the same ministry, Federal Ministry of Communications, Innovations and Digital Economy, can have a dashboard, but that dashboard has to be general. It has to just be not only national, but also subnational level. So it should be across the 3 tiers of government, but most especially at federal level, identifying issues. Because in most cases, if it is left to issue of saying you do an MOU, we have had experiences in NIDA as well as other places. We've had experiences of that not working. So there has to be a supervisory mechanism that ensures that that happens. So, and having a dashboard in the ministry, for instance, I think that can go a long way in addressing some of the challenges. That's my thinking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And before we go on, and I think we have a representative from NCC, Mr. Clement Omife. Sir, please, could you kindly join us on stage? We apologize for. Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. You're welcome. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So I guess we can move on now to Mr. Babatunde. What do you think? In just a minute, how can this work? What suggestions do you have?
Oh, thank you very much. I'll take you from where my boss spoke. Don't let me go to personal history. So, anyway, right. I think it's also important that when we have a supervisory ministry or at that level, it's also important for us to put the framework in place for how the ministry should exercise its discretion as to, okay, I believe that this agency should do this or the other agency, or that both should collaborate. But I think the most one important factor in this is who is better resourced to do this particular job at this point in time. If there is a privacy breach, for instance, there is a limit to what we can know technology-wise as to how this happened. Sometimes you want to call on the police to help in that regard. Sometimes you really want NIDA to come in that regard. So it is to first determine, and even for an agency itself, to say, am I able to do this on my own? Am I really suited, even if the power has been given to me to, investigate? But in practical sense, am I resourced enough to be able to achieve this? And what better framework? The law, the strategy for e-government does not leave us in conjecture as to what to look at. Transparency. Let's be transparent about it. Are we driving at efficiency? in this regard? Are we going to get more accountability? These are the drivers. Will it bring more inclusion? Will it foster interoperability? And how about the capacity building aspects of this? These are the, like the North Star that you can look, okay, I believe that this particular agency is better resourced to handle this so that the society is better off, other than an agency, yes, I have the power, let me sit on it, and then nothing is moving.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Ajala, please.
Yeah, thank you. As every previous speakers have said, collaborations is the human element, because you said, can there be something that can be like an automatic trigger that if there's a need for this? But we just have to be, it's the human element. I will tell you from the ministry side, when we had to do the demonstration project, which we gave 10 million to selected 10 entities, we had to do it with Ministry of Agriculture. So whatever solution that we say, come and demonstrate, Ministry of Agriculture will tell us, there is a farm here, you can try it out. There's a farm there that you can try it out. When we had to do the livestock hackathon, we had to do it with the livestock ministry. And I will give you an example whereby it's just the human element. Digitalization rests with our ministry. And there is this agency that holds massive resource that you cannot even see the typewritten, handwritten. You need to go back to it. And we were to digitalize. And when we got there, questions came up. One reason to another. But there's another agency, which I'm not mentioning their names. The House of Assembly asked them to submit some records. The records for 17 years, about 500 companies. Each one of them has over 400 pages average. And whatever you're submitting to House of Assembly, you submit 60 copies. So imagine submitting for 60 copies, for 500 pages, for 500 organizations. So you didn't need anything. The minister and our minister agreed. As I'm talking to you, we're digitalizing, capturing thousands of pages for them now. With the Nigerian Digital Economy and E-Governance Bill, what we will provide for the House of Assembly member is just authority for them to see. They offer even on their phone, they can access all the documents. Then if they need an auditor to see the hard copy, they can basically send somebody to verify. So these things we're talking about is when people bring in the human element. If it comes to digital, it's all. So we need to work with education, we work with them. We need to work with agriculture. So, but we think about automatic, this is the human element that is actually more important.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Mr. Clement Omife. So just still in line with what the fellow distinguished panelists were trying to highlight. We are talking about regulatory harmonization. Fine, we know that there might be overlaps, but as they've identified, there are instances where they need to come together to work together. And so as part of the NCC, is there any approach, from the NCC's perspective that you see can help to maximize these instances of intersection or minimize any instances of conflicts or overlaps in the implementation of your operations, especially as it relates with the startup ecosystem?
All right, thank you.
Is it working? I think it's working.
All right, thank you very much, moderator. All right, so from the NCC perspective, let me first of all talk about, as agencies of government, sometimes we'll need to work together. Our job cut across, and I'll give you a special instance. For example, though other
Dr.
speaker, Dr. Lame, talked about, the Ministry of Communication, Digital Economy and Innovation. But sometimes it may be agency outside our
Ministry.
So I'll take, for example, CBN. The NCC and the CBN, we collaborate a great deal. Just as the Director General Nida talked about cashless, and some of these things they needed to ride on the telecom platform. So that brings the two of us together, and we needed to find a way to collaborate because telecom is providing the vehicle for us to actualize those services. So, and as my brother said there, you need to look at who is better fit, to actually drive this. When we're talking about digital inclusion, we looked at it, should it be bank-led, should it be telco-led? Who is better fit? So that needs to be put in perspective, in context for you to decide. And one of the things is, as agency of government, we're actually for a government, we are pursuing almost the same goal. So is different strategy, but if we work together, we'll still achieve that. There is something we're currently doing with CBN now, and it was because there was an issue, on failed, what we call failed payment transaction, which means some telecom consumers, accessing telecom service through the banking channel, and those things don't go through. You understand? So they are seeing the telco as, after all, maybe let me not mention a particular telco, but they are saying, oh, it's your service I'm trying to get. But actually, it's being done from the banking platform because, nobody goes to the bank now. From the comfort of your home, from your phone, you can make a purchase of data or airtime. So if they don't get fulfillment, it's the telco they hold. But we know that back end is beyond that. So NCC and CBN have to work, closely. And now we're almost at the point of finalizing the national framework on failed payment to address, those issues. So I see a situation depending on, what you're trying to, the issue you're trying to solve. You need to work together. Okay, so for fintechs, for startups, and let me, okay, so probably most of, we have some developing maybe in the health and some other sector, but at least some that have come really on board. You have the, those playing the fintechs, and again, some of them that are into financial services. So you're looking, is the authorization from CBN? Is the authorization from the NCC? We've also have to work together. We've also tried to fast track, some of the regulatory processes because sometimes some of these services are not services that we already have, but we also don't want to stifle innovation. So we look at how we can, assist them through proof of concept, or even like the DG mentioned in his speech, regulatory sandboxing. And we have class licenses where they can make is a general registration just to help them, come on board. And also general applications that we're also developing just to help the startup. And let me put also on record because, my EVC is also from the tech space. And one of the things we do in, when somebody comes with an innovative idea is that, look, how is this going to help Nigerians? What service? How are we better off with this? So let's not look at the barriers of regulation in as much as we want an organized ecosystem, but we must at all times see what value are they bringing and how can we accommodate them into that space.
Thank you so much, Mr. Clement. In fact, if in a nutshell, I'm just going to try to summarize the core takeaway from these submissions right now. And please correct me if I'm wrong. But for one, I heard Mr. Clement and even Dr. Ajala highlight the need for a case-by-case understanding of what is required. He spoke about the human element. And, the example you gave, Dr. Clement, about the NCC and the CBN, by nature of the technology that is, that enables their interaction, they tend to work together, and it's easier for them to come up together and co-create solutions. So it's critical to look at the case-by-case basis and identify those specific regulatory convergence points in order to come up with a solution. And then I heard Dr. Gambo also highlight that when it comes to the interventions, we could consider a dashboard as opposed to an MDA, right? And need to consider an overseeing ministry. And of course, Mr. Babatunde highlighted the need to also consider who is equipped, who is capacitated, who is resourced to take on all of this. So these are moving parts that need to be considered. So I would like to thank you very much for these core insights. I know that our time is fast spent, but I know that even if this is the only takeaway that we take from here, it's well worth it. So I would like to thank you, my amiable and distinguished panelists, for sharing with us your insights, for an amazing session. So thank you so much, sirs, for this session. Thank you. So maybe we'll go.
Okay, we are about to close. Please, a final round of applause to our speakers, our panelists. Let them know that they are not alone, even though the hall is almost empty, but they are not alone. Thank you so much, our panelists. Thank you, our moderator. Thank you all for being very patient. I'm sure there will be a blessing for those of you that stayed back. Thank you so much.
Just once again, I just want to give a big thank you to every single one of you that stayed back. I'm so happy that you stayed back. The panelists, the speakers, they also appreciate that as well. And we hope to see you bright and early tomorrow for day 2. Thank you so much.
And have a wonderful evening. God bless you. Please, a round of applause for us.
Thank you so much.